Hi, I'm Hobie1, and this is Red Chair Reading. Once again, no red chair. I'm out on location at a lake north of Bishop, California. So we are reading the Black Book of Secrets today, Chapter 6. Let's go. A Grand Opening. Pagus Parvis was indeed very different from the city. It was a small village, clinging for its life to the side of a steep mountain in a country that has changed its name over and over in a time that is a distant memory for most. It comprised of one cobbled high street lined on either side with a mixture of houses and shops built in the style that was popular around the time of the Great Fire in the famous city of London. An airplane's flying by. What do you do? Of London. The first and second floors, and in the case of the home, a wealthy Jeremiah Ratchet, the third and fourth floors overhung the pavement. In fact, sometimes the upper levels stuck out so far that they restricted the sunlight. The windows themselves were small, with leaded panes, and dark timbers ran in parallel lines on the outside walls. The buildings were all at strange and rather worrying angles, each having slid slightly down the hill over the years and sunk a little into the earth. There was no doubt that if just one collapsed, it would take all the others with it. The village was overlooked by the church, an ancient building mostly frequented these days when someone was born or died. Entry into this life and exit from it were deemed noteworthy occasions. But for most villagers, the intervening existence did not require regular church attendance. On the whole, this suited the Reverend Sterling Oliphant very well. He didn't seek out his flock. He preferred them to make their own way. Besides, the hill really was unusually steep. Despite this and the snow, by mid-morning the next day, a small crowd had already gathered outside Ludlow's new home. Even before the sun had fully risen behind the clouds, a rumor was circulating that the old hat shop had a new occupant. One by one, the villagers puffed and panted their way up the hill to see for themselves. The murky windows were now clean and transparent, although the varying thickness of the glass distorted the display somewhat. And the people pressed their faces up against the panes, eager to see what was on show. "Is it a junk shop?" asked one man, a reasonable question under the circumstances, for the contents of the satchel, excepting the food and drink, had been priced with a tag and placed in the window. The wooden leg was propped in the corner, and there was no indication of its cost. "It's animals," said another. Joe's frog was clearly visible, sitting in its tank on the counter. In the daylight, it was quite remarkable in appearance. Its glistening skin was a patchwork of vibrant reds, greens, and yellows. It was most unlike any frog that lived in the soupy ponds of Pagus Parvis. Its feet were not webbed. Instead, they were more like long-fingered hands with knobby joints and toes, which would have made swimming quite tricky. As if on cue, Joe's face appeared in the window. He was holding a sign, which he placed carefully at the bottom of the display. It read, "Joe Zabbidou, pawnbroker." The villagers nodded to one another, not necessarily in approval, more as if to say, "I told you so," even though they hadn't. Joe then emerged with a ladder that he propped against the wall over the door. He climbed confidently to the top and unhooked the old hat-shaped sign. He fixed to the pole the universal symbol of the pawnbroker, 3 polished golden orbs stuck together in the shape of a triangle. They swung on their chain in a lazy arc, glinting in the low winter sun. "Is the frog for sale?" someone asked. "I'm afraid not," said Joe solemnly. "She is my companion." This admission amused the crowd greatly, and their titters created a cloud of breath around their heads. "How much for the leg?" asked another. Joe smiled benevolently, descended the ladder with remarkable speed, and stood before the crowd. "Aha!" he exclaimed. "The leg. Now there's a tale." "A tale? queried a youngster known less for his wit than for his inquisitive nature, while beside him his two brothers sniggered. "A tale indeed," said Joe, "but one for another day." There were sighs of disappointment, and Joe cleared his throat and raised his hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joe Zabbidou," he announced, pronouncing the J with a sort of shushing noise, so it sounded more like shh, "and I am here to serve you. I stand under the sign of the 3 golden orbs because I am a pawnbroker. A respectable profession in existence for centuries, of Italian origin, I believe. I give you my guarantee." Here he placed his right hand on his heart and cast his eyes heavenward. "That I will pay a fair price for your goods and take a fair fee when you choose to redeem them. All items accepted. Linen and shoes, jewelry and watches. Wooden legs," shouted out a voice. Joe disregarded this interruption and continued smoothly. "You have my word. You will not be cheated by Joe Zabbidou. Joe Zabbidou." For a moment there was silence, and then the generous applause. Joe took a bow and smiled at his audience. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," he said as they came forward to shake his hand. "You're very kind. Thank you, thank you." Inside, Ludlow jerked awake from a dream in which he had been pricked with 1,000 tiny needles. He sat up to find that the fire had been revived, and one of the logs was spitting, sending burning sparks onto his cheeks. Joe was nowhere to be seen, but there was bread and milk on the table and a jug of beer. Excellent. And Ludlow realized that he was very hungry. He drank some frothy milk and ate a thick slice of warm bread. He sat back, satisfied, but not for long. Hearing the commotion outside, he went to the door to have a look. Oh, hey, if this is interesting to you, please be sure to boop the like button. It'll help out the video, and it'll help to spread to other people. And thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. Joe was still shaking hands with the villagers. When he saw Ludlow, he nodded in the direction of the crowd, who were milling about, loath to leave the object of curiosity. Joe's arrival was an exciting event for Pegasus Parvians. Few strangers ever came to their village, and a pity they don't, thought Joe as he scanned the eager faces in front of him. There was that hooked nose again, and again those close-set, narrow eyes, the crooked smiles, each in a different combination on a different countenance. This place could do with some new blood, he thought. Then out loud to Ludlow he said, "Quite a welcome, Ludlow? Eh?" He turned back to his audience and continued to greet them, while Ludlow wondered idly if any had a pocket worth picking. That's the end of Chapter 6. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you in Chapter 7.